everything I can do on a smartwatch, I can do on my phone. And the idea is to reduce how much time you're spending on your phone.
Is it the Nima interview?
The content limitation. But I just don't see the value in having, like, how many times are you sitting out in public when you're wearing your smartwatch and you're just like...
Very, very rarely. Honestly, when I got the smartwatch, I thought it was going to be, I can text messages and stuff like that. Honestly, I use it for like sleep. I need to set a quick timer. Maybe if it's like alarm or anything like that. I don't really even use it for that. And like... heart rate and stuff like that.
I'm not really much of a consumer. Like, I'm only consuming to get ideas usually on social, so I don't spend time consuming. And I made a new rule.
What's the rule?
The rule is create before you consume. That's the rule. I cannot consume until I've created and published something. So always.
How does that relate to what you want to buy though? Like you're creating something related to what you want to buy?
No, just going back to like the distraction of this, like the watch and going on screen time and whatnot.
Oh.
So I don't have that issue. Like I definitely don't go on in the mornings. Right, like
you text me at 6 a.m.
Yeah, I text because I got so much on my mind. So it's like writing and texting people.
I think
I'm gonna start doing
social media is like
great.
Like you can be on your phone. Just gotta stay away from social media as much as you can, right?
Yeah, but I wake up and I've got like 15 to 20 social media notifications without fail.
Yeah, that's the issue. Like when you manage social accounts, what then? How do you?
Like you can't not look at it.
You can send just set business hours. Okay, like I start looking at it 10 or whatever. Right, let's say you got up at 8.
That's like inconvenient for him because he could be like standing in line at Starbucks and you respond to a couple messages. You know what I mean? Make that time productive.
Firstly, I don't stand in line at Starbucks.
I get it delivered.
No, I don't drink coffee. No. That's my thing.
Okay.
I don't drink coffee. I stay away from that stuff. I see how addicted all of you can be. I've seen you at your worst when you don't have coffee.
No, I refuse to depend on coffee. I always tell myself I'm not going to be like a morning coffee drinker. I'll drink it like because I like the taste, but now I'm sort of getting over it.
Yeah, don't be fooled, everybody. There's water in these things.
Cristiano Ronaldo loves the water.
Is it? Yeah, smart.
He was there was a big interview, I guess, and he was like, I think it had a Coke bottle on it.
He moved it.
He's like, what is this? He's like,
yeah, that's how it should be.
And he wasn't even sponsored. He's like, what is this? He's like,
they were a heavy sponsor.
But he wasn't himself.
No, but
he didn't care. He moved it and he put the water bottle. And he's like, drink water, guys.
No, I love that.
And that's like the thing.
Coke and sports should be nowhere fucking near
they shouldn't.
Other.
No, they shouldn't.
And then I think the stock value dropped the minute he did that.
Yeah. I love that kind of influence. He's got influence, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That guy's got like influence of countries.
He just partnered up with Binance to be their I think it's their ambassador for a cryptocurrency platform.
Damn, I just missed him. He was staying at the same hotel in Dubai that I was staying at a week prior. Oh man, that would have been
nice.
Cool. I'm not really a starstruck guy, but I got respect for him.
There's some people though that if you meet them,
boss man.
Like I grew up watching Brazilian soccer only in the World Cup.
Yeah,
and I met Ronaldinho, and I was just like, oh my god,
speechless.
That's cool too.
Yeah,
that's
he
really
was
cool.
maybe 10 feet away from me, not even, closer. And I was looking at him, and I was completely fangirling.
Yeah,
I was very much like.
Yeah, I love that guy.
I feel like I wouldn't be like that with anyone, but probably with a couple people, like because it's like you don't believe that the real like if Jay-Z said, I'd be like, oh my god, this Jay-Z. Like I wouldn't like as much as I would think Jay-Z.
Okay.
As much as I think I'd be like whatever.
Like,
Jay-Z would be cool to just meet. Like I would want to meet them as business people and
just
men
just chill and just kick and just talk and just chill.
Yeah,
like I feel like that would be.
Ronaldinho would have been freaking cool because I
dope.
love that World Cup. I don't know, it was 96 or something, 2006 or something, not 96, 2006 probably, where Brazil just dominated.
Wasn't it 2002?
It was Ronaldinho, Carlos, the dream team. No one could even touch them.
Wasn't even close.
Yeah, it wasn't even a thought. But the shit he did, man, that guy's amazing. And he's so his character is so
oh yeah,
goofy.
he's like that in person. So I met him. Yeah. I tried to speak to him. He doesn't really speak very much English. So there was someone there that was translating, and he was so lively, but it was so cool because you can see just the energy change in the place that we were at the minute he walked in. I think there's very few people that have that sort of pull and influence.
Did it spill?
Yes.
Apparently Brad Pitt was at Mourani last night.
Really?
And I did not go, guys.
The one time you don't go?
Shoot this morning. Well, I didn't by choice. I was
get some sleep.
Oh no, you didn't go to the restaurant.
Listen, I'm not starstruck with Brad Pitt. Respect for him. The guy's such a good actor, right? I've watched all his movies. He's a good actor, right? So it'd be cool. It'd be cool to meet him, right?
Like I would want to meet them like and chill and talk. I wouldn't just want to meet like, oh yeah, like I saw me walk by and like
Actually, like speak.
yeah,
to
yeah.
them.
That would do nothing. It was actually like chill and like talk.
Yeah,
Have you seen Seven? His movie with Morgan Freeman.
Yes. Very good.
What is it about?
Did you spill?
No, he didn't. Spill.
7.
Poncho, we promise the floor is dry.
It's just water.
7. Which one was that?
So that's the one with where he's a detective, right? And Gwyneth Paltrow. He's married to Gwyneth Paltrow.
It's based on the 7 Deadly Sins, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
It's based on
I have
the 7
seen
Deadly
it, but I
Sins.
suck at remembering movies.
It's such a mind twist at the end. I mean, the movie's been out for so long. If you haven't seen it already, that's your fault. But Kevin Spacey is the main villain at the end of that.
He's such a good villain, that guy.
Yeah. And
in real life,
so creepy. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a good movie. I recommend it.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch that again.
But yeah, I think that's one of my favorite Brad Pitt movies. That and what was that other one that he did? Was it 7 Years in Tibet? No, Legends of the Fall.
Yes,
the one with Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins is another
Troy
person.
too, right?
Yeah.
He did Troy.
Let's not forget Fight Club, people. Fight Club.
See, I didn't like Fight Club.
Really?
No. Such
Why?
a twisted movie.
It's one of those movies where I'm like, it's one of those like, what's a movie that everybody loves that you don't like? And I'm like, Fight Club. I was like, it's the same guy. I'm like, I understand the movie. Like, I get it. Like,
And I don't like. I'm not a big fighter. I don't like fighting and violence and all that. But that movie, I don't know, just twisted.
It was a great movie.
It's so like twisted, and it was.
I feel like the twist was just like this, but it was just for me. It was just so. There's no way it was the same person because even sure like the way he was fighting himself, like there's no way you can like he's getting like dragged and he's like how you drag like I was just like
Some people when their mind is that like crazy and tough.
Well, yeah, I mean the idea is to suspend belief.
See, that's my problem with movies. I have a very very hard time suspending my disbelief.
Well, that's your fault.
And it is.
I'm like the opposite. Magic tricks. I'm like, so cool. It was magic.
Like every movie I start watching, I'm just like, this can't happen. I'm like, he totally would have been upset. Like like no matter what. And that's why like I think I stick to like comedies and stuff like that. Like action movies, I can't. They're entertaining.
I love action movies,
but like for me, it's just
old
like
school action movies.
Old school, new school,
like 90s, like Van Damme, Stallone.
Yeah, Beverly Hills Cop, things
Steven
like
Seagal.
that.
Beverly Hills Cop is cool, but
yeah, like those comedy
I grew
ones,
up
like
on
the
those
Rush Hour
movies.
ones. Yeah,
No, I'm talking about before Rush Hour.
Before, yeah.
Like those 90s flicks where like, there was a 3-minute montage of the guy walking down the street just like pondering about his life because some tragedy has happened to him.
Comes some
and
guy
like,
just shoots the guy.
And like things like Transporter and like
like those
Expendables.
kinds of, okay. Expendables is literally
like,
all the
so,
90s guys back.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so
super
cool. And the
it's
fights are just like
super,
surreal. Like that would never happen.
Yeah.
Is there what's your favorite top favorite movie? Top 3.
It's tough.
Goodfellas.
Oh yeah.
What's this movie with Richard Gere and Edward Norton? Primal Fear.
Okay. Goodfellas is a good movie.
Goodfellas is good. Casino was good.
Casino was a great movie.
I like Fracture. It's
The one with
Anthony Hopkins
Ryan
and-
Gosling.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins in anything.
That's an interesting one. Yeah. And then obviously like Shawshank Redemption. And
Shawshank's
those,
classic.
a Gladiator.
Gladiator was a good movie.
I didn't really like Gladiator. I don't really like fighting.
I love Gladiator. I love Troy.
Really?
Even.
Maybe that's why you didn't like Fight Club. It's
No.
literally a movie about fighting.
Maybe that's probably part of it too.
I feel like that because that's
That
the
could
vibe
be-
I got
yeah.
from you. This guy
Yeah, I
doesn't
don't
like
really
fighting.
yeah.
He seems
But like Troy,
very chill.
for like a fighting war movie, I like Troy. Like for like there's a lot of those. Like I haven't seen Saving Private Ryan, which I heard was an amazing movie.
It is. Yeah.
But like a lot of those fighting is just I don't know. I don't like them.
I don't know. I like action. I do love like rom-coms.
I love rom. Oh, you have to love rom-coms though. You love.
You know
rom-coms.
which one is really good? The one with Steve Carell and Ryan Gosling. Have you seen that one? I don't remember what it's
Probably.
called. It's a really good
Probably.
movie. I
I've
can't
seen them
remember
all,
what
bro.
it's called.
I've seen a lot of them.
They
man.
all sound the same. They all have the
Yeah,
same name
yeah.
to me. But
What
they all-
Woman Want was a good one with
Mel Gibson.
Yeah, that was a
that
good
was
one.
a cool one.
That was a good one.
I always try to like be like, yeah, girl, we'll go see that. Fine, we'll go see the rom-com.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to see
Pretending
action.
like you don't want to see it. Listen, rom-coms can be very entertaining.
They're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I guess we should get started at this
Let's
point.
get it going. Yeah.
Got some good B-roll there.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Gents Talk. We're coming to you here from the Startwell studio, as you can see here on the mugs. Can you see it? Is it? Yeah, there you go. And then just a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, BULOVA, and Got Style for hooking the gents up, making us look fresh as always.
Thank you.
I think our segue was actually a good one because we're talking about 90s movies. And the other day I was watching The Godfather part 2, which is better than part 1, in my opinion. It's a controversial opinion, but it's better. Even though I love Marlon Brando. He was like my favorite actor. Growing up, that was the actor that I would watch. And I was thinking to myself, growing up watching the movies in the 90s with my dad, the Seagals, the Stallones, the Van Dams, like that was what I learned it meant to be a man, right? And then I realized that that's how my dad instilled in me to be a man, right? Strong, always did the right thing, always fought for the little guy, always tried to, save the day, be the hero type of thing. And I think it was a trigger moment, because then I started to think to myself, just about my father and fathers in general. And then I was reading that article that you had posted about, it was for Father's Day, but it was talking about how we celebrate mothers on Mother's Day, and it's such a big holiday, but fathers get much less attention on a day like that. And I think fathers in general are not given credit where credit is due, but the role that they play in shaping us and men in general, the next generation, I think is such a big part that we sort of overlook sometimes. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm...
Yeah, look, for me, there's a couple things where I wish my dad, instilled a little bit more discipline. He kind of gave me free reign, which was good, cool. Most people would want that. But I wish I learned a few more lessons from him in terms of, he just wasn't around a lot. So he was always working overseas, and we were in Canada. He was in the Middle East. And yeah, I was just like, man, I see this. There's this bodybuilder trainer in my building, and I see him training his kids every Sunday. And these kids are like black belt. They're trained to the max. They could do more pull-ups than all of us combined. Like, and the guy's 16 and like 12, right? And the amount of discipline, I'm like, Dalton, good for you.
You don't know how many pull-ups I can do.
Yeah, you don't know. You haven't checked.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, good for you. The discipline that they're instilling, they probably hate you for this, spending their Sunday for 3 hours working out and swimming and training, but they're going to thank you later. But also, like, make sure they get the social skills and the other stuff, right? Like, and I see that. I'm like, man, I wish I got some of that. But then the good thing is, when we turn into adults, like, that's it. We can't blame our parents anymore. We have the choice and the freedom to go and do and become whoever we want, right? So I kind of like, it was too bad, but I still think he really, he did his best. We're all just trying to do the best we can. And now it's sort of like, I'm blessed. I feel so grateful. I had a great childhood and brought us to Canada. And I'm like...
You said your dad was working...
Yeah, so he would be working like Saudi Arabia.
Right.
We grew up a little bit, like I was born in Lebanon. I'm half Palestinian, half Pakistani. So we were born during the war, Civil War. So one day, some soldiers came knocking on the door, and they needed to get through. And I was an infant. I was like 2 months old, and my sister was like a year old. And 2 other sisters were like, toddlers and kids. So these guys knock. He's like, I got kids here. I can't open the door. And they, knock. And then they're like, look, we're going to knock one more time. Either you open the door or we're going to break it down and come through by force, right? He's like, no, I'll open the door. He put us all in a room, like sort of hit us the best he could. And they just went through. They ended up just going through, and that freaked him out. The next day, he's like, we're going to Canada. And then we ended up in Calgary, baby.
Calgary.
But yeah, I'm like, that alone, to me, that's like more manly. I could not do that. Like, I don't know what. I don't think I'm man enough to handle something like that, right? So the fact that he did that was to me like my opportunity. Now that I brought you to Canada, sky's the limit from here. Go create, right? So what about you?
I feel like me, my dad was there, I guess physically. He was, he raised me, my sister, my other brother. But he didn't really, he was more, because he was young. He must have been probably like maybe 24, 25 with 3 kids at that point. And so I guess because like a lot of my siblings have a lot of disdain for my father for good reason. But I always say, like, if you think about it, he was doing the best that he could do given his surroundings, right? Like, if I couldn't imagine having a child, let alone 3 at 24, right? What would I be doing? So it's like, how could he teach me so much if you probably didn't even know that much, right? So it's hard to really think about from his point of view, which is always the hardest thing I find when I talk to my brothers and my sisters. It's like, what are you supposed to really do? And he's talking about the article. What really inspired me was, I didn't see it this year, but like there's a lot of times around, obviously Mother's Day, we get all the love, but like it's Father's Day, you'd see a lot of, oh, I'm the happy Father's Day to me because I'm the mother and the father, which is like, no, like give the men their praise, because obviously, you know, the men aren't always there. You know, that's where you get the whole, that's why it's not as much love on. But the men who are being there, who are good fathers, like I know a lot of my boys are like really good fathers. Like, you know, and it takes away from that. So it's like, yes, there's been so many bad fathers, but like, why do we have to not give grace to the good ones? Yeah, right. And it's like on Mother's Day, you don't see the single fathers being like, oh yeah, I'm the mother, happy Mother's Day to me too. They let the mothers have their day because it is their day, and Father's Day they should have their day as well. So
you're saying that it, you know, when stuff like that happens, when you see people saying, you know, like, oh, you know, I played both roles type of thing, it takes away focus off of the men who are being good fathers and changes the narrative from celebrating the good fathers to focusing on the fact that there are also bad fathers out there.
Yeah, and on Mother's Day, we don't focus on the bad mothers.
Right.
We only, like, Mother's Day, it's all, like, you know, and the same thing we're talking, like, if, like, you give any, like, I work at a restaurant, you give anybody who is a mother gets love. Like, you know, from everybody, right? And but for fathers, like, you only really get that happy Father's Day love from your children and your spouse. And like, I'm not usually, you know, I'm not, if you're a father and you're my boy, I'm not gonna be like, hey man, happy Father's Day and get you something, right? But if it's a girl, any lady, and it's like, okay, yeah, happy Mother's Day, here's some flowers. You get flowers for pretty much any mother, every mother, grandfather, aunt, everybody, right? Even expecting mothers, right? And fathers is just like, okay, well, nah.
It's funny. My dad was like, he would always get mad when we bought him stuff. He would like not even want to receive it. He's like, no, focus on you. Get it for yourself. I'm like, yeah, I'm still getting myself stuff, but you also deserve stuff like on your birthday. And like, he would just hate it. It was just, it's funny. I know.
You didn't like receiving
your dad? No.
Oh, well, my dad, so similar to your story a little bit. So my father grew up in a civil war in Lebanon. He was 16 at the time when, you know, he had lost his dad. So imagine a 16-year-old in the middle of a war. You lose your dad. And now you got to navigate and figure out your way. Like, it's bad. It's hard enough when someone in North America loses a parent at that age. But now imagine you're adding that to the backdrop of an extreme civil war, and you have to navigate that, right? And it certainly has been something that I think my father has never really been able to fully come to terms with, because it completely shaped who he was, who he is. And then, you know, with the testosterone and pent up aggression of all of that as you're getting older and stuff, and then all of a sudden, you know, he meets my mom, then they have me, and now he's got to be a dad on top of all of this backdrop. And similar to your story, you know, they ended up coming to Canada. I think they thought, if I remember the story correctly, they thought they were going to Ottawa or Montreal because there's a bigger Lebanese population there, but they ended up in Toronto, thankfully. And
no love for Montreal?
There's love for Montreal.
Ottawa, not so much.
I mean, there's not much to do there.
There's nothing to
do. But he tried to do, I always, you know, growing up, I used to get into arguments with my dad. We used to butt heads. You know, he'd yell at me, and, you know, like the stuff that your father does to you, right? Like an immigrant father, right? He'll discipline you. He'll tell you, you know, you got to do this, or don't say that, or behave this way, or be polite, those kinds of things. And there was a lot of times where, you know, like I wanted to go out with my friends and do stuff, and he always set a curfew. And I was just like, I don't understand. Like, and as I got older and we started talking about Lebanon, I could start to see where some of that, you know, conservatism came from, if you will, of like, you know, after dark, only bad things happen, because, you know, he grew up in a civil war where, as bad as it was during the day, things got even uglier at night. Right. Mm-hmm. And so for him, he was just like, you know what, once it's dark out, I'd rather my family be at home, type of thing. But I never understood that. I was, you know, a teenager just trying to be rebellious and trying to go out and do stuff. And then as I've gotten to this stage in my life, I look back at him and or I look back on his life rather. He's still alive, thankfully. And I just think to myself, he did the best he could within his own limitations, and his limitations, a lot of it was externally set. Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I would hear stories of like, oh yeah, I got shot here. My cousin would talk about how he got shot here and I lost a leg here, and a bomb came down and her dress got blown off, and I'm like, they're talking about it like it was Saturday night what they did. I'm like, this is like, you almost lost
to hear it,
right. And then the fact that your dad lost his dad at such a young age, I mean, that impacts a guy, right?
100%. I mean, imagine now he's got nobody to really look up to, nobody to sort of set him on his way to say, hey, don't hang out with these people, or focus on your education, or do this or do that. Don't do this, don't do that. And none of that existed, so he had to sort of find his own way and chart his own path. And one of the things that I'm forever grateful for is that despite all of that, my father had every reason, every excuse in the book to be a non-existent father. But he made it a point to be existent.
He didn't complain about it. He didn't like use his past. Like you don't.
No, I mean, like he would have bouts of like anger and stuff that again, it's just unresolved trauma.
Yeah, because at that age, especially in that environment, you're not talking about it.
No,
like you're.
And
one, there's nobody to talk about it
for men now.
There's nobody to talk about it, and nobody there's no one wants to hear you anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, you're complaining, but now what? Change it, do it, and they change. So that's why when you hear people complaining here, like in this comfortable environment, you're like, just go change what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. Like that's why I feel with immigrants, they're just so grateful to have an opportunity because we know the alternative. It's like when you're waking up in Lebanon during the war, you're frustrated. You're like, fuck this government, man. Like, let us just live. We just want to live and like, live life, right? So, and they don't have that choice. They're like, okay, am I gonna live today or die today? Basically, that's their choices, and it's like, thankfully, like we're so grateful to be here. Just waking up every morning in Canada, I'm just like,
it's first world problems. Like,
definitely,
it's still problems, but it's definitely first world problems because like you think, like even like the danger and the violence, it's not bad here. Like it's like compared to like almost anywhere else, like it's kind of safe. Like Toronto is safe in comparison.
Well, then you add like the day and age, the digital age we live in, and the opportunities we're given is like, this is the best time to be alive, and we're in one of the best situations. So it's like, like
I mean, imagine if a pandemic had happened prior to being able to basically run a business off your cell phone, right? Like, or even now, if you think about some of these places in the world that are in the middle of a conflict and they can't find work, or they're dealing with a recession of some kind, they can't find work. Meanwhile, we may not have our physical jobs, but we can go and create something and start a digital job. Our parents didn't have that.
So many more opportunities.
100%. And I think we have to sometimes remember that a lot of these first generation immigrants are coming from very little, and the courage it takes to pick up your family and move them across the world, not understanding the language, not understanding the politics, not knowing people, and then to set up shop, and then the best job you can get. Like, imagine as a man, your ego cannot exist. You got to shut that ego down,
especially
because you got to get
being a doctor
to being a cab driver, or being, and no disrespect to cab drivers. Those guys work extremely hard. But the idea is, if you studied all your life to be a doctor, you didn't anticipate that after years and years of work that you're going to be driving other people around. And I think that's where sometimes, like when I see people are rude to cab drivers and to people that are working in some of these other industries, I'm just like, why?
Yeah, like the humility it takes to take that step back, and just because they're just thinking about their family. Like, I need to provide for my family, and I can't be a doctor here, so let me just do whatever it takes to feed my family and figure it out, right?
Yeah. And that's sort of like, that's the same lens that I look at my father. I look at that same perspective on other fathers who've sort of left everything behind to come and make a better life for their family and their children. And I'm like, how do you not credit those men for the work that they've put in? Because that's like, we complain about the stupidest things ever. And these guys are out there busting their asses, working 2-3 jobs sometimes. They're barely home because they got to put food on the table. And then I see them get treated poorly. You see these social media posts of like these teenagers with like no respect or regard for anything, just like shit talking the driver. And I'm like, dude, why?
Yeah. I mean, there's no excuse not to just be kind to people. Like, you get so much more benefit out of it. And, like, why bring anyone down? Like, if we could just be kind to one another, just you get more out of people with kindness, you know?
100%. Yeah. But, I mean, it makes me think about, you know, being a father one day. Because I feel like that's a calling for me. Like, I want to have my own kids.
You want to have kids?
Yeah.
I don't.
No?
No.
What?
That's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
No, let's get into that now. Why?
And have you made that decision? Like,
it's not nothing in life for me is 100%. But I feel like at this point where my life is, I don't know, man. The future is like, we are moving in a great direction as a whole. But I don't want to bring kids into this world, man. Like, the world it's as much as we're moving up, like, it's still like, it's not, I don't know, the future doesn't look very, very super bright. Okay. In the grand scheme of things. And it's a lot. Like, I like living my life for me, and like just have all my time be my own time, and not have to stress. Like, obviously, if a friend of mine or someone I love or care for gets hurt or gets injured, I obviously feel that, but I don't feel like it is my fault, right? And if you have a child, like everything bad that they do, at some point you're gonna look back. Well, I obviously had a big influence on that, so maybe that's me. Just like when you see kids and they commit suicide, the parents are always like, "What did I do wrong? What did I do?" Like, at how, even though it's not your fault, because people will do whatever they want to do. But it's also a lot of extra, I find.
So, is this something that you think could change if you had the right partner, or let's say you meet someone and like, is this a deal breaker for you? This is a hard no.
No, it's not a hard no. It's a no, but not a hard no.
You think that maybe if circumstances in your life are different, or, you know, ideally everyone's lives continues to improve, but you think that if you're in a different circumstance, perhaps that changes? Like,
if I'm dating a girl and she's like, I want kids, I'm gonna back off, because I don't, like, I'm not 100. If she's like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to disappoint you, because I'm not at 100. If you are like, yes, I want kids, then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna do this, because I'm not necessarily wanting kids, and I don't want to. I'm a maybe. Like, it's potentially could possibly happen, but I don't want to get into this. And then let's say it's 5 years down the road, I'm like, okay, well, I don't want kids. And it's like, well, I want kids. I've always wanted kids. Now we're in this situation. And it's like, why would I put it in that? I'd rather just, if you're a maybe, or if you're a no, I'm okay with a no too. But just if it's a hard yes for her to, I want kids, then we're definitely not on the same page. And it's obviously about being on the same page.
And I think that's a great way to always start a relationship, is like, once you know it's getting serious, like, figure out what those non-negotiables are, right? And that sets it up for, you know, not wasting so much time, or, you know what I mean? Just, it's hard to have that conversation, but it's so important. Like, if that's a deal breaker, figure it out early on, right? What about you? You're saying that's your calling, fatherhood.
Yeah.
Do you love kids?
Yeah.
Even at the pool when you're trying to relax and they're screaming and yelling?
I mean, like, kids are gonna annoy the crap out of you, but there's just something about having a child that's yours that you can, I don't know, they bring so much joy. You ever see, like,
I love kids, like kids that I know.
How much joy does Michael's daughter
I love
bring
that
him?
girl so much. Yeah.
And you're not even related to her.
No, I would cut off my arm for her in a second, right? Like,
now imagine if you had your own child.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I get it. I am too, like you. I know I'm gonna be a dad, right? I love kids so much, but I also like hate them so much. So it's like, it's a weird thing. Like, I'll be with you a couple hours a day, bro. That's it. You don't need daddy all day long.
The best thing about kids is giving them back to the parents, man.
Yeah, mama and nanny can handle you, or whoever help, grandmas, aunties, all that. But like, no, I'm here for an hour,
Uncles,
2 hours of
brothers.
Quality. Yeah, I'm a good uncle too. I love being an uncle to all these little munchkins. But yeah, it's a weird thing. But I'm already making dad jokes for the last 10 years, and like,
you're getting ready.
Yeah, I'm getting ready. I'm always the banter with the waitress and all that. Like, it's just the lamest stuff. But yeah, I love them so much, but I fucking hate them sometimes too. When I want adult time, don't come near me.
Do you feel like your upbringing has made you want to have kids, influenced you wanting to have kids or not? I mean, obviously it has, but like, do you think it's like a major part of it?
I think so. I know that I've talked to, I've heard my parents talk on occasion about how they regret not being around when I was younger because they worked, like immigrant parents too, right? They work long hours. And just sort of that bond of a family for me, I think is important. But I'm also mindful that family doesn't just mean blood. And I want to make that clear from the beginning. I don't think family equals blood, because there's blood that will screw you and will mistreat you and will take advantage. And
just because you're blood.
Exactly. And they think they can get away with it because of that. For me, I think family is who you build a real bond with. But to go back to the childhood thing, absolutely. I think, you know, having kids and sort of continuing, like making my parents grandparents, for example, to me is like something that I think is a gift that I could give them as well, because I know that, you know, it would tighten our bond even more. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Mila, watch out.
But yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's left an impression on me. I think about it.
When, do you know when? Have you thought of like when you're ready? Are you ready now? Like
I would be, yeah. Like in the right circumstance, with the right situation. I think I would be, but it all just depends on, again, the right circumstance, the right situation, the right person, the right values. Like at the end of the day too, you want to make sure we're talking about those parameters, or not parameters, but like figuring out what your boundaries. Thank you. You know, you want kids, you don't want kids, that kind of thing. And then there's also the component of, you know, are you a reckless spender or are you a saver? You know, how do you deal with A, B, and C? When you have a kid, that shit gets magnified.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're, you know, all of a sudden if one person becomes uber religious and then the other one's like, I'm not so religious, and then you start to disagree on how you're going to raise the child, right? Are they not? How are you going to treat them when it comes to discipline? One's super lax, the other one's super strict. Like all those things I think are super important that you got to figure out before, like having a child is...
It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. It's also too, it's like, you can call it selfish, I don't care, but like once you have a child, like you now live for that child. Mm-hmm. Like you are no longer you.
No, I don't believe in that. I think people are using their children as excuses
but like,
for that.
Yes, but like a lot of like somebody's like, okay, well, it's like everything. Now it's everything you do for that kid, because you make sure that kid gets through and has a better life than what you had naturally. That's kind of like the natural process. So it's like now it's like, okay, well, now I gotta, because when you have a kid, everything changes. As any parent, everything changes. And I just think that, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
So you're worried about that responsibility, that change, that sort of like, but again, I don't think people you know, believe that so much, but you could change that perception. It's like, it doesn't have to change things. Yes, it becomes about them and you want to protect them and give them the best life. That's one thing. That's just adding to your life. I'm still creating my life and going after my dreams, but now you're added onto my life, and I'm going to make sure I create a beautiful life for you and allow you to create your dreams. Right. But like, you know, better, worse, I don't know. It's just, I'm going to love you. I'm going to support you.
With everything. Yeah, I don't think it's bad to have kids. I just, also another thing, there's this, you're never ready to have a kid until you have a kid, then you're ready. But I really don't believe that, because we are all fucked up, right? And that comes from our childhood trauma, which is because our parents weren't ready to be parents, which is almost all parents, because we were just thrown into a situation. It's supposed to be, okay, you figure it out. It's like, well, maybe not. Right? Because like we all have all this trauma. All our trauma really does, at least most of it, stem from neglection or whatever your parents did or didn't do, and because they weren't ready.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of people that should not be having kids. That's
absolutely.
For damn sure.
Do you find your childhood affects your perception of having kids?
No. I think the restaurant changed my perception.
The hospitality industry has done this.
Kids, because like the kids that I know, like my friends' kids, they're lovely children. I have a nephew, beautiful child. It's I guess it's probably just from seeing all these kids just running around in the restaurant, and the parents all just like, you know, they're all fed up, and like, you know, they're out just to have a breather from this child, because they're so exhausted, and especially parents, like they're always exhausted. Parents are always exhausted. Like parents, like anywhere from newborn to probably about 12.
Lack of sleep.
Yeah, because like you because your whole life is them. So like they're always exhausted, and borderline pissed off, I find, right? Until the kids aren't around, they have a night without the kids, and it's like, oh, like, you know, we get to let loose and enjoy ourselves, which I like. Obviously they do, and they love their children. No one, I don't know any parent that doesn't love their child unconditionally, and it's a different type of love that you only get to experience when you have a child. But again,
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question because you've talked about this to us a few times. You said that your relationship with your dad wasn't really existent.
I wouldn't say it wasn't existent. It just wasn't. It was more like surface level. He wasn't around that often. It was a lot of my grandmother, my older sister, my other older sister help raising me. He was more of the friend. He tried to be like the friend cool. He was younger, good looking guy. You know, anytime like parent teacher interview, you know, try to like talk to the teacher and stuff like that. So it was more just trying to like, as we got old, even as my brothers and sisters talk about it, it was more just, I don't know, I feel like the having kids was more just kids to have kids, opposed to I want to be a great father, I want to do this, I want to teach my kid this. Like, I wouldn't say I have any real like strong, oh yeah, my dad taught me this to help me. This is what my dad taught me to help me be a better man. I feel like I don't have.
You don't
many
resent
of those.
him for that, dude? Like, do you feel that resentment at all?
No. He's, like I said, it was in that situation. Given the situation, he was.
Which is great because you could have held on to that and held that anger, right? And I think that's a healthy mindset.
Guys do that.
I don't have the energy to just hold on to hold on to shit. It just, for me, it's too much. It's too much. Like,
is that generally how you operate, or is that a conscious decision specifically related to your dad?
No, generally, like everything with my mom too. My mom was very rarely there. She was more or less a stranger to me until a few years ago, and there was never really any resentment or like my mother had a heart attack or stroke a few years ago, which was a very interesting part of my life because I was telling people she was in the hospital. And I was telling people, like, oh, you got to go see her. That's your mother. I'm like, she was unconscious at the time. It's like, well, I don't know this lady. She's this, like, and I end up seeing her, and I'm sitting there, and she's lying on the bed there, and it's just like, there was nothing. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, my mom is so hurt. It was like, no, like, there's this random lady lying on the bed. Like, what? I sat there and I was like, what am I really doing here? I don't know her. And it's the point, like, even if she woke up and we don't have, there's not going to be like a, oh, hey, my God, so happy you're here. Like, you know, like, I missed you. And like, there was nothing.
That's so crazy.
And it's crazy. And then it was like, so many people would be like, oh yeah, you got to see just, and it's like, just because she gave birth to me, which I understand, I'm obviously grateful. I wouldn't be here without her. There's no arguing that, but there's obviously more to that. You gotta be in my life. You gotta help take care of me, help raise me. If you didn't do any of those things, then I don't know you.
That's so crazy, hey, because if it was one of us and our mom's lying there, like I'd be crippled. My heart would be on the floor. I would, I can't even think about that, right? And I can't, like, I don't want to even think about that day that happens, but to not have that is like such a different perspective, right?
Yeah, that's it's definitely something that, you know, I can't say resonates with me.
Yeah,
but it's interesting to hear because I think I'm like, my curious mind is trying to figure out, you know, how much of this is like, how much of, for example, the fact that you don't want kids, at least right now, stems from some of that sort of molded you this way.
Well, for sure, it would have a lot to do with it. My mother has quite a few children. My dad has quite a few children. And
how many siblings do you have?
Total, maybe.
You have to count.
Yeah, you definitely have to count. Definitely count.
You have to look up in the sky and think and count.
Maybe 12.
Wow.
Total. My mother has 6 children, and my dad has 6 or 7.
Do you talk to them?
Yeah. We all we didn't talk a lot as kids, but as we've gotten older, we've gotten in touch, and like we were like, okay, don't let the stuff that our parents have done impact us. So like we started a WhatsApp group, and now we really are doing a lot better job at, like, you know, connecting. You know, my oldest brother had a birthday party. We went by his house, and it was nice to just, so like, I'm starting to really feel that bond, family that everybody talks about, right? Because it's been just me, more or less, right? I've been by myself since I was 15, so I experienced, like I said, obviously pays into that, because as I got older and I deal with more family, you start to realize the pros, which is obviously there's a bunch of them, pros of family. I usually see the cons of family, because when people talk to me about family, it's always, you know, got like Christmas dinner. Like I don't understand for something like Christmas, it's like everybody hates it usually. Like, you know, it's like, oh, I gotta go by my aunts or uncles, whatever, and spend this time and act like, you know, you do all this to spend 25 minutes, 30 minutes to people that you don't really like, that you don't talk to all year. And it's like, for me, why? Just because they're family? And like, I find with a lot of time family, two people talking and, oh, like my uncle, you know, disrespects me or whatever, talks to me a certain way, but that's my uncle. And I feel like with family, it really sets that backbone of allowing people to disrespect you. And because of their family, a lot of people say, well, that's just how they are. That's just my uncle. That's just my aunt. That's just my grandmother. But I'm like, no. Why should you let somebody disrespect you for any reason?
It's a very interesting perspective.
What about you? Do you have a sister?
I have a sister, yeah. I have a younger sister. We butt heads still to this day.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, she pokes at me all the time, as younger sisters do.
How old are you again?
I am 34.
34.
A young 34.
That is a young still, man. What
Thank
about
you.
your sister? How old is she?
She's 5 years younger than me, so she's 29.
Is she married?
No.
So no nephews or anything?
No,
yet?
no.
Nieces?
So it's, you know, like when my parents were always at work, it was always her and I. And growing up, you know, I had to babysit her right at a point in my life when you start making friends and you want to start at the point where you're like, I can actually chill after school, right? The bell rings, you don't have to be home by a certain time. You can actually just chill with your buddies. And instead, I had to go home and babysit because my mom was working and my dad was working. And my mom worked retail, so she wouldn't be home until, 7, 8, sometimes 9 o'clock. And my dad would, finish work and he'd go straight to the mall to pick her up. So it was, oftentimes her and I, or, we would go and we'd sit in, like a relative's apartment until my parents finished work. And we always just butt heads for a very, very long time. And we still do. And we care about each other, but it's just one of those, like, we just butt heads for so long that's sort of the default.
Do you find you get along like it's a more mature relationship?
Yeah. Like it's definitely matured over the years. And just, through shit that happens, you start to bond more. And I think it's just a byproduct of, there's definitely a lot of things that, I agree with you that there's definitely a lot of things that people tolerate when it comes from family. That under any other circumstances you wouldn't tolerate.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing because sometimes you'll go even beyond and hurt family more, knowing that they're gonna come back. You know what I mean? Like you have that leeway to, like, you'll be nicer to strangers sometimes out of embarrassment and like humility than your family, like because you're just unfiltered, right? And they have to love you. They'll be back tomorrow, but sometimes
sometimes they won't be back tomorrow.
Sometimes they won't, and I've faced that issue, with my family. So it's like, everyone has their limits. You can only push so far until it's like, okay, now you've pushed me away, bro. You know what I mean? So, but it is nice to know you have that. Like I talk to a lot of friends that are only childs, right? No siblings. And it makes me feel more grateful about my siblings, right? I have 3 sisters and we don't appreciate it enough, right? Like I miss those days when me and my sister would fight and do these little things that were meaningless, like, or fight over the remote for TV after school, God, right? Yeah. Like I try to get there before she does so I can control it. Like, we didn't really appreciate it at the time. And now it's like, as you get older, you really start to think about those things and appreciate it. And now when we don't even live in the same cities, none of us, well, actually my sister just moved here, but when we're together, like they always want to go do activities and adventures and all this. And I'm like, I just want to sit here and have coffee with you and have a conversation. You know what I mean? Because we don't do this, and we might have 27 of these left in our lifetime. Like, you understand the impact of how important this hangout is?
Yeah, there's a threshold that once you cross that threshold, the amount of time that you're going to spend with your parents and your family is on the decline relative to that first half of your life. And that's a weird thought sometimes for me to process.
Yeah, like you were with this girl every single day of your life for how many years, right?
Yeah. And like to the point of, like 27 times or whatever it is, when I think about my parents, I think to myself, the amount of times I'm going to see them between now and the future is going to be less than the amount of times I've seen them up to this point. And that declining number freaks me out sometimes.
Scary, right?
It's like me with my grandmother, because like I'm 100% grandma's boy, and she is 86, And like she's already at the point where she's talking about like when I'm gone. I'm like, don't. We're not having that conversation. We're not having that conversation. Like you're never leaving. Like you're not allowed to go anywhere. But as I'm thinking, it's like, well, she's older. Like her hips hurt, her knees are bad. She's she's survived cancer twice, which is good. But it's just like it's the thing with it too. It's like
strong lady.
It's like really it could be any day, but it could also be any decade, right? Because and it's scary for me to think because she always lives all the way out in Oshawa. So I don't get to see her often, and you got to cross the 401, which is a mess at all times of the day, no matter what. Like it is absolutely terrible. But and it's like how many times, and it's just like I feel so bad. Sometimes like if I don't see her today, I might not ever see her again. So it's like I'll just like rush over and see him like how you doing, come back. But it's the same thing you're talking about. Like who knows how many times you'll get to see that person again, which is scary to think about.
Did you find that you had? So with your dad sort of working overseas and you being here with your mom and your sisters, do you find being raised by how many sisters do you have? 2 sisters?
Three older sisters. Yeah.
3, 4. So 4 women raised you essentially because they're all older.
Yes.
And then your dad wasn't around as much because he worked. How do you feel that changed your upbringing, if at all?
I mean, it definitely did. So it was me, my mom, and my youngest sister. She's just
you have a younger sister.
A year and a half older than me. She's the youngest.
I see. Okay.
And then there's 2 older that there's a little gap of like eight years between us. So we're close, and then they're close, right? From 2 different mothers. So they were always, they loved Lebanon. They loved Lebanon. Why they sort of hated Calgary and they came here with us at first, and then they went to Lebanon. We stayed here. So it was me and my sister, the closest one, and then my mother. And of course, we see them all the time, and they had a huge influence on me. And I actually just, I picked up a lot from them. I feel like I got my intuition, from them. I feel like the female intuition is quite strong, and they pick up things, and their emotions pick up things that men sometimes don't have that sort of quality or trait. But just being around women, I think I learned an appreciation for women, a more respect for women. Different perspective too, which was nice. So it kind of like softened me up because I'm very like right. So it's like it was good and soft, but they're also pretty too. So it got dangerous. But I loved it. I actually loved it. I enjoyed it. I probably didn't appreciate it enough in my younger days, but I really appreciate it now. And we bump heads and we have issues, and I always tell them like if this stuff is just small and petty. You know what I mean? Like I said, we only have limited times together. We don't even live in the same countries, right? So we see each other once or twice a year. That's important. And if we did that for even the next 20, 30, 40 years, that's not a lot of, times together, right? So let's talk about something positive. Let's build something together. Let's support each other. Why are we criticizing? And, I know you want to protect me and you want the best for me, so I look good and the family respects me and all this stuff, but like, who cares about that? Don't you want me to be happy? I want you to be happy. Are you living your happiness? Like, you know what I mean? And it's like with family, especially in Arab culture, it's more about showing them off, or like, look at my son, he's so successful, or this or that, or he's a doctor, he's this, or and it's not about look how happy he is and look what how much impact he has, or look his kind heart, or what I mean? Like, and I value that way more, and I'm just like, let's just support each other no matter what. Like, let's not judge and all that. And I find that's the hardest part, is like, out of protection and love. Like, your mother's job is to protect you, so she doesn't want you to take a risk on that business idea, or lose money, or invest there, or go here, or do anything dangerous. But that's where all the excitement and adventure is, right? So it's just a focus of mine to like really strengthen the relationship now, right? Because we didn't do that in our younger days, and time is just slipping us by, and things are happening, and diseases. We lost our dad to cancer, and so it was like, that was a wake-up call of like, it could happen any moment, and it happened quick, and we were like, it all impacted us, right? And especially for them, because they were raised by him only. They lost their mother at a young age, right? So it's just a lot of things going through my mind around that.
Can I ask, and if you're comfortable sharing, when did your dad pass?
Well, 5 years ago.
How's that changed you?
I mean, there's a lot I wish I could have, communicated to him, and I think we talked about this in the past. Like, we weren't like, I wasn't like, he wouldn't say I love you. We wouldn't be having the loving conversation, or like, are you happy, or how are your dreams? Or it was very surface stuff, right? The love was there. I know he was a good man. He was, he did the best he could. He, picked up a few nuggets from him. We just didn't have those deep conversations. And, when he got sick, he just sort of wasn't the same man anymore. Like, it deteriorates you, right? Cancer. And physically, he didn't look the same. Mentally, he wasn't there. And I just felt like that was the biggest regret. Like, why didn't I initiate it? Since I was sort of the new generation, I was thinking about this, it's more normal in our sort of culture, not our culture, but our generation to talk more, right? We were sort of opening that door up a little bit, but I didn't do it, and I regretted it, and it became too late. So it taught me, like, value people and say what you want to say. Like, don't brush off a family meetup or someone you really adore and love, or a conversation, because you might not get that opportunity again, right? Like he was saying about grandma, like, it's like, I'm tired, I don't feel like going to see grandma. No, you don't know when you won't have that option anymore, right? And so it's like, cherish the people in your life that are here, your fathers, your mothers, and value them. And you don't have to be with them all the time. Let's say, because a lot of people say, my mom drives me crazy, my dad drives me crazy. Cool. You're not with them every day. Just go and, like, appreciate the things you do, like, focus on those things, right? If the love is there, like, you know what I mean? If you value that, right?
Is there anything that you've sort of taken away that now is instilled in you for when you have a kid one day?
Communication. I think I'm going to just over communicate love, like support. I'm not going to try to tell you what to do. I'm going to advise you and let you experience and give you a platform to experience as much as you can and do as much as you can, and just be you, and just make a safe space for you to be you, right? And that's all. And I got your back. I got your support. You slip off the edge, I got you, right? But just go figure out you, and I'm not going to judge you for it. I'm going to support it and just try to teach you the things like, keeping your word, discipline, responsibility, loyalty, trust, just the fundamentals of what I think, a man should have, right?
Matthew, in your scenario, with your dad essentially not being present for most of your life, is there anything that, if you could instill, is there any lessons that you've taken away from that whole experience that, even though you don't want to have a kid, you can share with people who would want to have a kid? Like, is there a lesson learned in there that's like, you know what, if you want to be a father, this is how your actions can impact your child, so do A or don't do B type of thing?
I think same thing. It's like communication. Just got to really be open and talk, and realize that your children are, like, at some point they are getting old and they can make decisions for themselves. When that time comes, is up to the parent. But I find, it's like, you always be my little baby, and you're not, like, you got to really just let them do what they want to do, obviously within reason. But you really focus on just communicating and talking to them.
What about you? Like,
affection. Just show the person affection, I think.
I think more, not even just show affection, show as like a man giving affection to other people, so they not like, like, because you can say behind, I love you to your son, but then outdoors it's kind of like, so as long as you got to see it as a child, because you absorb everything. So see the affection given to other people, see the kindness, the kindness to strangers, or see your dad. You're talking about how your dad used to hang out and talk to his buddies, like seeing that and seeing the loving relationship with his dad, seeing. Because I've seen my dad, my friends, it would be my uncles, but that was just like kind of kicking it, be drinking beers, not like, more seeing them like really hanging out and doing stuff that are building their relationship as brothers. Just me seeing that as a child, be like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. Like, we're supposed to be more open with each other, not just family, with other people as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think affection for me is a big one, because despite all my father's, he did the best that he could. Still does to this day, when I talk to him, he'll end the conversation by saying, I love you. And it goes such a long way, because it's just this reminder that, inside this man who's had to deal with a life of hardship, essentially, that he still manages to find a spot in himself to show the affection to his child. Because, to my dad, I'm always his child.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that I would want to instill when I have a kid one day, which is to show them unconditional affection. And the affection isn't when I say unconditional, it's not tied to when they behave well, they get affection. When I'm annoyed because of work or they do something that annoys me, that all of a sudden I'm a cold-hearted bastard, right? Like my father always did that too, where no matter how angry he got at me, and he would get angry at me, as soon as sort of that initial anger happens because, I did something stupid or I cussed in front of my mom.
You're acting like a bozo. I still love you.
Yeah. But like he would make it a point to come back into the room and just talk to me and be like, I love you. I want you to understand that, what you did is wrong. Don't do it again, that kind of thing. And it always reminded me that no matter how angry he got at me, it's not like he hated me or despised me.
He didn't take love away from you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing because it taught me that you can be angry because of a situation, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to bleed into everything else. Mm-hmm. And that's almost sort of an approach I take now with just, in my relationships with people in general, where I could be so angry at you for something. There's some people that will get angry at you and then all of a sudden be like, you're dead to me. I'm like, you can't just turn that off, right? Unless you're a psychopath. You can't turn that off. And so if you get angry at someone, you can still show them affection afterwards. Yeah. It doesn't depreciate how angry you were at a specific incident. And I think that's something that I'd want to consistently instill.
Yeah, it's more on, it's just more on like the behavior. You're angry at this situation or the behavior, not the person. It doesn't change like my, love for you as a person, but what you did, I don't love. You know what I mean? That's sort of, you got to separate that, right? Yeah. But did you feel like pressures, like culturally, like when you're like, being in the Arab community, marriage is a big thing, right? A big deal. Is it like that for you and your family, or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is and it isn't. I think. So obviously, you guys know, but essentially, I was married at one point and now divorced, and that's a big taboo thing in Middle Eastern culture.
The divorce?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. How long were you married again?
3.5 years. And that's a whole other story. But the point is, the idea of divorce is such a taboo thing for a lot of men, a lot of women too. Almost more so women in Middle Eastern cultures.
Would you get married again?
So after we split up, I was very much like, no, I'm done. And it's kind of like your answer to kids, where it's like, no, but under the right circumstances,
anything is possible.
Anything is possible. And I think I slowly move more towards that, because I think the initial, like, I tried it didn't work, I fucking hate it, I don't want to do it ever again.
Did you learn a lot? Like, do you think the next marriage, if you do get married, you'll just be that much better of a husband?
100%. Yeah. I it's like anything else in life. You do something, you screw up, or it doesn't work out the way you anticipated, whether it's a business deal or, you fail a test in university. You learn from what you did wrong or what didn't work, and you apply those lessons going forward. The smart people will apply the lessons going forward. If you repeat your mistakes, then, you're only screwing yourself over. But in my scenario, there's definitely been, I think one of the things that I've always focused on over the last couple of years has been taking stock of all of the lessons that I've learned from that relationship, and then saying, how can I improve on that? And part of that too was, figuring out what kind of man I wanted to be, because I don't know if I would have been, I believe I would have been a good father, but I don't think I would have been as good a father as I could be now, type of thing, because of all the lessons I've learned. Mm-hmm. So in that scenario, I'm like,
Did you almost have kids in that first marriage?
We talked about it. It didn't come to it. And in hindsight, thankfully, it didn't, because I mean, like,
it would have
gone complicated and messy. But at the same time, too, I'm like, you can see obviously how much I'd want a kid, and the idea that you'd have to split how much time you can spend seeing your own flesh and blood, to me, is just this unfathomable concept. And when I see, men talk about, being a father and not being able to see their child, it's one thing when you have a man who doesn't actively see their child when they can. And it's another when they want to and they can't.
Yeah.
And that to me is just so heartbreaking anytime I see that. And which is why I'm so thankful that it never got to that point.
Me, the twisted thing is like, you have a kid together, you break up, and let's say it's not so pleasant, and now you hate each other, right? Which I think is already an issue. I don't see why that has to be. But anyways, so you hate this person, but this person loves this child so much, and you love this child so much, and you have so much love for the same thing that you share in common, and you created this beautiful thing that you would never regret. You'd never have a regret around that, obviously. But it's like such a mixed emotion. How can I love this person so much and hate this person?
When there's such,
when there's so much love there, and I depend on this person to keep this person alive and keep this person thriving, and we have to agree to make sure we create the best future for them. So to me, it's such a messed up situation that I would never want to be in that situation. Right?
But again, too, nobody plans to be in that situation.
No, you're right.
It happens.
Nobody goes into it saying,
I want to get married, and then I want to have a divorce.
Have a kid, and then get.
But I think it's those signs, intuition, your gut. When we ignore some of these things, then we get into that. And as we mature, especially as guys, like, I don't even think we develop that emotional maturity until a little bit later, like I would say 30s, mid 30s. But it's like, it's not even an age thing. You just, when you know, but I think those signs, you can't ignore them. The gut is so powerful that, every time I've gone against my gut, it always bites me in the ass.
Well, that's an example, a good example of a lesson learned for me, which is, not ignoring the signs. When there is something that's off, that's fundamentally wrong, or there's a crack in the foundation, when you ignore it in the hopes that it will just go away, it's the worst thing you can do. Because it's only going to get worse. That crack will get worse, and then eventually you've got to collapse. Mm-hmm. And so for me, those flags that you talk about, there's red flags for sure, things to look out for. But there's also green flags. That could be a good indicator of, this is a person that you could be with, that you can see a future with, right? So for me, it was just identifying what my personal red flags are and what my personal green flags are. And then sort of basing, instead of that person's pro and con list that we all mentally do in our heads, it's more about, here's my list, and this is what I want my partner to meet, right? Within reason too, right? Like, nobody's perfect. Yeah. But that's sort of how I do it now.
Nice. What about, like, I had someone reach out and was like, yo, you guys should talk about, arranged marriages, right? And I'm not married, I'm single, and I don't have any kids. So these are very hard topics for me to talk about personally, just not having experience around them. But the arranged marriage thing, like, although I've never experienced, it's very prominent still in our cultures, right? And in Indian culture and things like that. And it's such an interesting thing that I have friends like second, third generation here, and they're still sort of like, their parents want to pressure them into that situation. Oh, we met this girl, we're going to bring her to Canada, and it's like, whoa, this is still happening.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Like, is that?
I think for here in Canada, it's odd, because it's like, because
I know people who succeeded, like they met, got married, and they have a beautiful life together, and they like love each other, and they have kids and all that, right? So
I strongly believe in the organic, like, let's like it meet organically and we grow together, opposed to, well, we're in this situation, let's figure it out, let's eventually try to find love. And sometimes you never do, and you're just in it because I find like it's more just like a business arrangement.
It's weird. I mean, I shouldn't call it weird. So it's different. It's different
for Western.
Yes. But it goes back to what you were saying, because you're like, it really starts after you get married. The work starts.
Yes.
So is it one of those things like, okay, I'll get to know them. They still obviously get to know each other a little bit, right?
What if you can't stand that person? How's that work? Because obviously, like, some people you just don't.
They meet with the intention to get married. They don't always get married, so they meet and they still get to know each other for a few weeks, and the families have to meet and all that.
Sometimes it's faster.
Sometimes it's faster, and sometimes the families already know each other and they were like there. But then, it's like, if they're not forced to get married at the end of the day, right? So it's like, it's there with the intention to get married. So they're both there. It's like, you're on your 10th
like an
date
audition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like it, then you sort of take it to the next
But
step.
I find
and you
in
pursue
these,
it.
at least a couple of people that I've known that have been in kind of the situation, it's like, well, it's kind of, okay, if the guy decides he likes her, then it's a marriage. Opposed to the both mutually agree on, we want to move this forward. It's like, okay, son, I have this woman that's good for you. Do you like her?
I think so. In those scenarios, I think that's more so the people involved, because anytime I've spoken to anybody who has that it's more prevalent in their particular culture or their religion. It's very much both people have to essentially agree type of thing. And I think that sometimes gets lost in it too, that it should be both. And there are scenarios for sure where one person says, and it's typically in that scenario like the one you gave, where the guy comes in and says, yep, I'm in. And the girl's family might sort of enforce this on her. Yeah. And I think that's extremely unfortunate when that happens, because...
Well, even on the guy, sometimes they enforce it and he feels pressure. Like, I got to get my engineering degree and I got to get married for my brown parents, right? Like, you know what I mean? And there's and you're like, that's the guys I'm worried about, of like, that's a scary thing. Like, do you even want to do this?
The person that reached out to you to say about this topic.
Yeah, it was like, I could only imagine, like, my mom and my parents are pressuring me to get married. And I'm 25, 26. I'm like, I have no business, getting married right now, right? And why does that have to be, like, success to you or whatever? You want your son to get married and grandkids, and, it's like there are those pressures where they feel, and they still, live for their parents, and they still, like, go through that and don't have the courage or strength, or just because they love them so much, they don't want to disappoint, right? So it's I can't believe it's still sort of so strong in Canada anyways, right?
But I mean, like you said at the beginning, it's I don't have that. I've never been a part of that. You haven't, obviously, neither of you. So we can only really speculate at most.
Yeah. Well, when I go back home or I'm visiting family, you married yet, or have you met someone, and all this, and it's like at 37.
That's a cultural thing, though.
Yeah, that's definitely a cultural thing, and it's more of a joke. They don't care. They know me, kind of thing. Like, I sort of beat to my own drum, right? So I'm like, at 37, it's rare. Like, I should have kids. All my peers have kids and families, and like, live in the suburbs.
Which is insane, then, because then you start to think about how our parents were so young.
So young. I think about it all the time. So young. Yeah. But
can you imagine by now if you had a kid at the age that... How old was your dad when he had you?
He was a little older, but my older sisters, he had them, he was much younger, right? Because there was a gap there, and then he had us, so he was a little bit older.
How old was he when he had your sister then?
My mom was really young when she had me. Like, my mom was super young. So
like in their early 20s?
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Imagine now if you had a kid in your early 20s, they'd be like 15 years old. You'd have a full-fledged teenager on your hands.
Jesus, I'm only 37, man.
Well, but if they were 22.
Well, we have a friend. Remember Bong? We called him Bong. Shout out. He had it at like 23, I think he was. Right? And I see him now. He's like 40 years old. And his kids are like 13, 14, 15. They're self-sustaining. I'm like, fuck, I kind of wish I did that. I would have had some friends. I would have had some friends.
It's kind of a cheat code to have them really young too.
Yeah.
It sucks.
You get more of your life back.
Yeah, afterwards. It sucks at the time. It's hard. It's super difficult. But then you get to the age where now you're 30, 31. And it's like, okay, like I don't really have to take care of this child as much because they're almost adults, right? So now you get that time.
You took care of them when you had more energy.
Yeah, opposed to when having kids when you're 30, 40. It's like now it's like harder because I got to run around, play catch and stuff. It's like, man, I just want to sit down. I just want to sit down.
Well, it's funny because I have another friend, similar story, young, whatever. Then got a divorce. Now he's like, 38, 39, 40. In his prime. Has these like 12, 13, 14-year-old kids that are like, doing their own thing. They don't like need, daddy around all the time and whatnot. Just like they're self-sustaining, right? And I'm kind of like, damn, I wish someone told me that hack, had that kid's got it out of the way.
Yeah, that's
got the marriage out of the way. And now he's like a single.
I don't know if that's a hack, but
I think it is. It's a hack.
Well, look, he's got his marriage out of the way, the kids out of the way, most importantly. And then he's making more money. He's got more comfortable with himself. Like now he's doing like part 2 of his life. So it's a different thing. It was like, I was just interested. But I was like, damn.
I think you could do all of that even if you were still married and had kids.
Yeah.
I think it all comes back to if you have the right partner.
Exactly. And defining and labeling, and you don't have to do any of that.
Like
right?
if you're both on the same page and you're sort of moving together in the right direction, I think that can unlock so much.
Yeah, the right partner can change. It changes so much. Like they almost make you a better person. Like they do make you a better person.
They should make you a better person. Or at least should make you want to be a better person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it almost just comes natural. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but it's like, wow, I didn't know I was capable of this, right? So that's where I think that support that we were talking about.
That's my current relationship, essentially. It's like I've unlocked this new level.
Yeah.
Right? In this video game of life. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, just like.
What's this new level? Who's the boss on this level? And like, how do I get past this? And yeah, you
just know you don't know why or how you're more capable to do more things, but you just know you're more capable. And if she wants something, wants to do something, you're like, yeah, that's, I can comfortably and confidently say I can do it, right?
Like so when we were talking with Michael about like the entrepreneurial spirit, one of the things Michael was talking about was how like he's got this itch. Like every time he sees something, he's like, how can I create a business model around this, right? That's the entrepreneurial spirit. That never existed for me, ever. And then now it's like I come up with an idea for something and I share it with my partner and I'm like, hey, what do you think if I did this? And she's like, yeah, and if you did it this way and then you did that way and if it's a shitty idea, she'll just be like, I don't really see how this is gonna benefit you. Like she'll be my critic, but then she'll also still be my number one supporter if I'm adamant that I want to try this type of thing. And then like that again, that unlocks a whole new level.
Yeah, and it's just like a little thing, but it's like, just like, what about this? Or I love that, go for it. You know what I mean? That is like magical, right?
Mm-hmm.
You find that. And Mila, I've met her. She's amazing. Yeah, you can just tell right away when you meet her. This is a good-hearted person.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good. Mila, remember this episode.
Yeah.
Scoring brownie points here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, honestly, it definitely goes a long way. But I want to sort of bring it right back to the idea of fatherhood. And I really want to, I'm going to turn it to you in a moment because of the article that you had written. But I think we need to do a better job in supporting and recognizing the men who are great fathers.
Absolutely.
And focusing less on the negatives of the fathers who, are not around, but also cutting some slack to the fathers who are around, may not be the best fathers, but are doing the best that they could.
Trying, yeah.
Yeah. And sort of I want to turn that to you to sort of, I don't know, share some of your thoughts on that because you had written that article so eloquently about celebrating the fathers out there.
Yeah, we have to, because it's so hard, especially my culture and black guys. There's this stigma, call it what you want, but like black guys not being there, right? So for me, it's really when I see a buddy of mine that has a child, it's like all the buddies that I know, my friends, are good fathers, at least from what I know. And I have a buddy of mine who actually went through like a really hard, long custody battle of trying to get his daughter, and it was it was hard for him. And I've heard through it, I heard about it, and it's like then he finally got his daughter and like talked to him quickly, and he was so ecstatic, and it was just, that's the kind of stuff I love to see, and that's the kind of stuff I always want to see more of. And I love that when men step up, I just don't call it step up, just do it like you were supposed to do. You have a child, take care of it, and you're just saying it's not always the man's fault. Sometimes they break up with the mother, and out of spite, there's just times out of spite the mother doesn't want him to have anything to do with the child. So and then it's flipped as, oh, you're an absent father. It's like, well, no, I'm trying, but because you and me don't get along, now I can't see this child, and that stuff's got to be separate. And with Father's Day, it's like it's really just, it should be the same. Just give the fathers their flowers. Just give them their flowers. Let them have that day, and the same way as mothers get their day, and there's no Mother's Day. That's it. There's nothing else.
How do we feel about these days? Like, should it just be this one day?
It's a complete marketing ploy.
Oh yeah,
Right.
all holidays, all that kind of
Is
stuff.
We're all
like
bogus.
Wouldn't a little bit of love every day and every week be much better than a whole bunch of love on one day?
100%.
Right?
100%. How do we break that stigma of the black father not being around? Because I have, guys in my circle and people I've met that are wonderful fathers.
Yeah.
And the stigma, you're right, is very much that, black fathers are not always around.
I think it's more like so for me, it would be like people that I know that have children, talking to them as a friend, be like, hey, like, are you taking care of your child? Like, and it's obviously a hard conversation to have, but it's people around you. It's the same. It's your circles. Your circles got to be on you for that. So obviously growing up too, it's like if you grow up without a father, it's does something to you. You might not want to be there, or like the situation. It's really just getting there and having your friends and it's got to be the other male. I feel like it's got to be your other male friends to help hold you accountable, to check in. Same thing as you would do. Everybody, if he's out drinking, is like, make sure, hey man, don't drink and drive. Like, make sure you're doing it right. And
you have a kid.
Yeah, you might not, like, and if it gets to the point, I'm taking your keys. You might hate me about it now. I don't care. You'll get over it. Right? Same things like, hey man, like what do you do with it? Like, you obviously, but it's hard because you don't want to get in people's business. But it's hard.
It's more powerful coming from your friends. I think. Like if you, you're out with your buddies and someone's like maybe, disrespecting a girl or something, and you tell them, hey bro, relax. It's different when other women would tell them, obviously, you know what I mean? Coming from a guy, be like, yeah, tone it down a little bit or something. You know what I mean? You might frighten her. You might, So I think it's more powerful coming from a guy you love and respect that checks you, going back to that, like accountability and making sure that you're doing the right thing and, and giving you the best advice for you. Right.
Yeah. Whenever I hang out, it'll be a night, I'm like, oh, let's go for a drink. Let's go to dance, go for a party. And one boy will be like, I'm with my daughter 10. I'm just like, yes. Like, it's like, and that it's like, it's that little reinforcement to let them know that, yeah, like that's, it's good.
Or they want to leave something and go back because I want to go see my boy or my girl.
I gotta head out early. I got daughter's soccer practice or something. My son's soccer practice. Like a perfect, like, there's no like, oh, don't worry about that, or really just
encouraging it.
Encouraging and supporting it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit today.
I learned a lot about Matthew today.
A lot about Matthew.
And he was a bit talkative today.
It's crazy. See how much we talk, and especially us. We've known each other for probably 10 years almost, maybe. And we still, to this day, learn things about each other. Right?
Well, just recently I learned that your other half was Pakistani. Yeah, I just always thought you were Palestinian Lebanese.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
These conversations, right? It's amazing. And you said this before. It's like you'd have like a friend you've known for 20 years and they just introduce you to a new person and this person tells you something new about them and you're like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think you just need to have just more conversations without distractions, right? Because I find usually it's when you meet up with the boys, it's sports or to the bar or doing something that is not like this, where you could just sit and talk. When you talk like this, eventually shit's going to come up. Good shit and bad shit, but like you get to really get to know that person because there's not the distraction of, we're talking in between, the football game or in between the baseball pitches or anything like that.
Where you guys being around each other talking is not the central reason you're there.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's such
you
a good point.
Got to make talking the reason we're hanging out. Everything else is secondary, opposed to we're going out for this, and then in the meantime we can talk as well.
I think women do that really well, and that's something we can learn.
Wine nights, for example. Yeah. Guys have wine nights, whatever. Replace wine with whatever you want, but those kind of nights where the goal is to just hang out and talk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everything, and you see these wine nights, and they're having a blast. Yeah. To the point, it's like there's no way you're having that much fun. Yeah. Like there's no way
you're just trying to piss us.
You're trying to make it seem like you're having a great. There's no way it's just 4 you girls hanging out, and then you guys have like the best night of your lives in your basement or in a room doing not absolutely nothing, but just talking.
Yeah.
Right. And it's doing that I'm trying to work more on doing that as well.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hopefully we can encourage it more.
Well, that's the hope, right? Like the idea is we want men to start having these conversations with other men.
I know I'm definitely doing it more in my day-to-day. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure you are in your day-to-day, just like, let's not go to a patio. Let's go to the park, and just hang out and chill and talk. And sometimes we'll talk and sometimes you just sit in silence. And all of that is beautiful, right? I find, and it just allows to nurture and build the relationship. And then you exchange really cool ideas sometimes, right?
Yep. I completely agree. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time as always. Poncho, thank you very much for all the great stuff you do. And we'll be back next time for more.
Yeah, great
Thanks
talk,
everybody
Jen.
for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.